Yeah,
And
like
as agents get more,
Fortune recently covered this, Travis, that there was an incident where an AI coding agent, it reportedly wiped out an entire database. And this is just an example because this looks like a human error, right? But
Mhm.
who is doing it? And it's kind of like, the risk that we're giving users. Anyway, go ahead. It's just
Well,
funny to me
this
that these
happened to
things
me.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah, this absolutely happened to me. I'm working on a first party application for Ambient, and
Hmm.
I back up my stuff frequently, and it's a good thing
Uh-huh.
because Claude Code deleted my entire database unprompted as it was doing a refactoring. You could see the train of thought, and I was desperately trying to press the escape key before this happened, but it had already happened. It said, well, this test is failing, and the database doesn't seem to be cooperating with me. So it would be easier to get this test to pass if we just deleted all of the content in the database.
It's
Uh,
like a horror story.
yeah,
But
it's definitely like something you tell your IT friends over a campfire on Halloween, right? Like this, but
yeah.
it's the ghost in the machine.
But this is not one of the things that Claude is doing. Even Axios was talking about this one thing where Anthropic, okay, and they were like, warning about this group of people using the AI agent, Claude Code, and it was for a part of an espionage operation. So basically, their own agentic tooling was showing up in real life attackers' workflows, and there is proof of that. And malicious people can get into these agent systems today and then use it. It's
That's
just
true.
one of the other horror stories here.
That's true. And so I think you're actually referring to another class of safeguards, which is a set of dynamic safeguards. So
Yes.
you may have a static set of things rules that prevent the agent from deleting your database. But then you kind of need to put turtles on top of turtles in order to understand the emergent behavior patterns of agentic
Right.
systems and monitor those. So there was a recent paper, I'm forgetting the author's name, but there was a recent paper that came out that suggested that AGI may emerge as a result of multi-agent interactions rather than from a singular model.
Right.
And every one of the agents in a chain may be quote unquote safe, but you don't know how they're going to interact. And the result of the emergent effects of having a bunch of them act on the economy at the same time. And if you
People
want
who
to,
think it's, yeah, US China is long gone. You're living under a rock if you think it's just US China who's going to lead us to AGI, because you don't know what goes behind these small agents who can communicate with each other.
you don't know where the next major economic force is going to come from. And if you want a simple, concrete example, look at supply chains and COVID. So you would have people who would buy ahead because they assumed that they needed to over provision their own personal supply chain in order to prevent a disruption. But then if a certain critical mass of people purchased ahead, they would essentially crash their industry because the manufacturer would get overloaded with volume. They wouldn't know how to service the backlog of orders, and essentially a random collection of companies that may or may not have been the most critical ones to the overall supply chains would get served.
Toilet paper. Best example.
Yeah. And no one was necessarily even being a bad actor. Like, they were all trying to do their best, but they had a series of simple rules that they applied to situations like first in, first out queues or last in, first out queues. And when you stack these things on top of each other with unpredictable demand, you crash the economy, like the entire economy. And if you think about the speed that agents will act in the economy, they will make humans look like dinosaurs. The story of dinosaurs is that a dinosaur could get bitten on the tail, and because there were there was such a length of nerve fiber in the dinosaur, it would take 3 seconds to reach the brain, and then the dinosaur would react. Well, we're going to be feeling like that because agents are going to be making hundreds of thousands or millions of significant economic decisions, and we won't understand the effects, let alone the causes, until things start to break. So
Right.
that's another layer of safeguards that you need to get verified, well understood behaviors. Again, like all of these things that we've talked about, all the things that we've stacked on top of the original verified inference are impossible without verified inference. Because if you don't have good insight or control into the execution of the model itself, you've got nothing. It's like the bedrock upon which all these other systems are built. And it's very easy to prove why. You just think about, imagine if someone substitutes a slightly dumber model in an economic loop that we've built up.
Right.
Okay, so maybe our first level of safeguards holds. Maybe the basic rules that prevent this dumb model from deleting our database hold. Maybe it's not so rosy downstream when the model makes a series of economic decisions that are not in the economic interests of one or more parties, or don't anticipate the emergent effects of the reflexive kind of properties that are being triggered. And as a result, you get a supply chain crash. That model, the smarter model, might have dealt with those situations with a degree of subtlety perfectly fine. But if you substitute the dumber model, it might lack that subtlety and cause an economic crash. Right. And at the point that the economic crash happened, you would never have even been able to test this scenario because you never would have had access to the unpredictably dumber model, nor would you have known what could have triggered the unpredictably dumb behavior, which could have been something as simple as the provider being overloaded temporarily, causing them to quantize their existing model. You would have no insight into the preconditions, and as a result, you would have no response that could be coherent. You would just see something that had been working that suddenly failed. So verified inference is a necessary, but as we say, not sufficient condition for reliable agentic systems. And what's really scary to me is that people haven't even recognized this.
Right.